The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being with us today. And it's, yes, and the volume is good. We're honoured today to have Terry with us. He's not with us every day, but he is today. And Terry, I'll just give you a heads up that we've got this same silly missing a mic message coming up occasionally. Let's hope it doesn't persist. Those of you who are with us regularly know we've had some problems over the last 6 weeks with getting this program to work after many, many years of using it successfully. So I can tell you if there's a problem again today, we'll be using a different provider. Anyway, you can hear me now, so that's grand. And let's see, welcome also to our friends in the lands down under. So it's good morning to those of you in God's country. That's Queensland, the state of Queensland that was spared by the cyclone, which was good news. And it's good afternoon to those in the rest of Australia, apart from the Northern Territory. And good afternoon to our friends in New Zealand as well. So we've done all that. That's great. Good to have so many of you with us. Mark and Jeremy, nice to have you guys with us. They're tutorial guys. Dave is as well. Wow, we've got a lot of people today. Harold, our Goldbug friend from Reading. Hope all's well with you. And we've got Jerry Winter with us today. Jerry's a broker that we recommend to you. Jerry's been with us pretty well since the beginning. And he's done a couple of Daniel Code tutorials as well. Not sure if he understands what we do, but he's certainly very interested, and he's a terrific broker. I know Jerry personally very well and his family, and I thoroughly recommend him. Kevin, good to have you with us, and Louis, and oh yeah, hi. Mark, tutorial guys. So Mike, here's another Mike, he's the same. Big turn up today, good. And Scott, over in New Zealand. Haven't heard from you for a while, mate. Good to see you back again. Sue up in Cairns, Demon Trader. Sue came to us last year, I think, and wanted to learn about trading. She was been trading a long time. She'd done a lot of courses. None of them worked, and she's been having terrific results with the Daniel Code. She's really thrilled to have found something that actually works. Sue, I hope that's still the situation. I hope things are still going well for you. And there's Dean, good to have you with us as well. Marvellous. Okay, let's get moving. We've got a fairly long session today. I hope all is going to work well with GoToWebinar, folks. As usual, if there is a problem, you have my apologies in advance. But let's hope that's not going to happen. So, okay, let's have a look where we're up to. And we're going to talk about success in some more detail today. Most of you who've been following with us know all about it. Because we've been running it in a test module since late August. So you've had it sitting there for free for 5 months and plenty of chance to evaluate it. And we're very happy with it now. In fact, we're going to release it on the weekend at the end of the month. So today we're going to just go through some of the interesting issues with it, tell you what it is, what's the best way to trade it. I think it's pretty exciting because it fills in a couple of blanks. You know, we've had our TO3 and plus signals for over 10 years now. And we know that they return better than 100% year in, year out. And we used to spend a lot of time tracking that. Terry did a lot of work on that for us. But what the success signal is that we're taking the effective trading time to its logical conclusion. The TO3 and the TO3 plus signals do have an element of time, but they also are dominated by price. And what we're doing with the success signals is we're producing a program that works entirely on time. And our fourth and fifth SEAL programs, they're heavily weighted for time, but this is the Success is the first program we've been able to offer you that is based entirely on time. So it's quite different to what you normally see. So what is time? Well, we can get into the physics definitions, which will blow your mind, but from a layman's point of view, at some stage in the distant past, our world was created. You can believe it's a Big Bang moment, or you can believe it's a moment of creation. It doesn't really matter. The reality is it's here. We're living on it. So at some stage in the distant past, it was created. And equally, at some stage, it started to rotate on its own axis. And that gave us day and night, and that was the start of time. The earliest measurement of time, in fact, simply distinguished between day and night. And here it is, our beautiful planet with the important water. Makes it so different to every other planet that at least we're aware of. And man started to try to measure time early on. The earliest form of clocks were, in fact, the sundial. And in its simplest form, you can draw a circle in the dirt and just get a piece of timber or post of any sort, stick it in the ground, and the shadow will track around as the sun moves around, or as the earth moves around the sun. And that was the earliest form of time, and they found midday. And for thousands of years, time was simply before midday and after midday. And soon they began to get a bit fancy. This is one of the very earliest sundials. You can see it's got a hole to put the stick in, and you can see it's measuring the increments, and they're different. Some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger. And that's a recognition of the varying results you get depending particularly on your latitude. Then they got more detailed and more fancy, and got to the stage that they were putting their shadow, which is the timekeeping part of it, onto an hour. Some of them had to be reset at midday. Others gave a pretty good approximation of time. Our ancestors had water clocks. This is a very early Babylonian water clock. Babylon is very closely associated with, then Iran, very closely associated with the development of time, as you'll see, and there are a couple of reasons for that. This is a really, really simple water clock where the water just flowed out at an approximately known rate, and you could measure by the amount of water the passing of the hours. They also had candles. This is a fairly sophisticated one. I couldn't find a picture of a more basic one, but they had candles with lines on them that drew at they burnt at a roughly known rate, so they got an approximation of time, and then many, many thousands of years after that, we got the sands of time that measured time with that particular device and variations of it. But early calendars were all lunar because, what were the ancients seeing? They look up at the night sky and they saw the moon, and it became a very important object for them. It was involved with basically mainly rural communities involved in planting crops and harvesting crops, and they noticed pretty early on that these the various moon cycles coincided with the optimum times for planting and harvesting. And this is a picture of a early calendar. This was actually a lunar calendar. It doesn't sort of yell out to me that it's a lunar calendar, but Wiki assures me it was. So that was the early idea. So the moon was there to see, so lunar calendar is an obvious way to go. And they've developed so much since then that we have some degree of sophistication in lunar calendars, and this is Wiki's explanation of them that are based on the initial approximation that two lunations last 59 days, a 30-day month followed by a 29-day hollow month. That's very interesting to us because the main problem for early timekeepers was that nobody knew what a synodic month was. And the synodic month basically is the average length of a month. If you take 12 synodic months, you're going to get very close to a solar calendar. And some of these early calendars were solar lunar calendars. They were had elements of both in them. But who knew what a synodic month was back then? Well, we didn't know till many, many thousands of years later. And the absolute specificity and exactitude in our understanding of time that we have now has really come to pass since we've had atomic clocks. The first of which was installed in France in 1954. But this synodic month is of great interest to us, as you'll see. Calendars basically measure time. The Sumerian calendar, that's the very earliest example that Wiki and other sources quote, and it was found in Babylon, and that's an area, particularly with the input of the Chaldeans, who were a tribe back in the about 500 to 550 BC. They were a very dominant tribe that provided a few of the kings of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire was made up basically of tribes, and they had different turns to providing a king. I don't think it was by consensus. I think it was probably just by power. But the Chaldeans are very prominent in any history of time in that sort of period, which we're going to be interested in. So you can see we started with a Babylonian calendar, a lunar calendar. Julius Caesar had a big reform on calendars in 45 BCE, which is the socially correct way of saying before the Christian era. I would say at least BC, but more politically correct to say BCE. And then that was amended by Pope, during the reign at least of Pope Gregory. And we got the Gregorian calendar, which is what we use today pretty much. It's used as the de facto calendar for secular purposes. But there are many, many calendars. There are many calendars for various feast days, various religions, lots of different calendars. But the Gregorian calendar is the one that we know and use every day. And it's interesting that historically, there was excitement about an 11th century calendar reform led by Khayyam, and how close he got to the actual length of a calendar year. Of course, all of that is meaningless to us, as you're going to see, because that's about 11,500 years later than when we are interested in. So the Chaldeans and the Babylonians, they're part of the Babylonian group, they were very active in calendars, and we have various artifacts that have been discovered showing that level of activity, and then they had this rise of the Zoroastrian calendar, which I'm not going to get into, but I know it's an interesting thing. Then we find the mysterious character Daniel. And Daniel lived, so far as we know, in about 500 to 600 BC. And what we know from historical sources, whether you accept them or not, doesn't matter, they're still historical sources, is that in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. and he besieged Jerusalem, laid waste to it, and he took the king back to Babylon as a captive in golden chains. They weren't so polite. They put out his eyes first. And they also took with them certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes. So these were young people. Daniel's described as a youth, and you can see from this old-fashioned language in here, basically what they were doing, they were trying to take back to Babylon as slaves, essentially, the elite of the young people, the elite of Jerusalem, and that they would teach them the learning and the tongues of the Chaldeans, and make them part of that society. So why are we interested in Daniel? Well, we're interested because Daniel gives us a couple of numbers, and those numbers are 1,290, that's one number, and the other is 1,305 and 30, or 1,335. And we then, Daniel also passes on some instructions, and what he says is he heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, who held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth for ever that it shall be for a time, times, and an half. And it's impossible, is it not, to think of an oath which would be more powerful or sacred than that. But from the writings of Daniel, he was told certain things. He was told to write them down specifically, and he did. And from that, we get these two numbers. Now, remember, this is happening sometime around 550 BC to 600 BC, that sort of era. It's a very, very long time ago. We don't seem to have independent sources for much of this stuff, but it's all very interesting that Daniel was disposed to write down these two numbers. In fact, he says he was instructed to write them down. And when you take those two numbers and do some simple maths, they compound to 29.67, 59.34, and 365.37. And then when we eventually get to those conclusions, we can look at a modern reference book like Wiki or an encyclopedia, and we find that 29.67 is the length of a synodic month, and 365.37 is just a few hours off a solar calendar year. And the question is, how? How did this possibly happen? How did a man living 2,500 odd years ago with no fancy tools, no fancy equipment, no modern telescopes, no modern computers, how did he possibly come by these two numbers, 1,290 and 1,335? How did he come by those two numbers? Why are they those two numbers in particular? They don't seem to have anything in common except they're both factors of 5. And then with some simple math, look at what pops out. 29.67, which we say is time. This is days. Remember that in the Kabbalah or scriptural prophecy, days can become weeks, can become months, can become years. If you like to see the expert on that, you can Google a document called Observations on the Prophecies of St. John. It's on the internet, it's available, it's free, and it's written by Sir Isaac Newton, the father of modern science. So you may very well wish to take issue with me, and you're quite entitled to. If you feel brave enough to have an argument with Sir Isaac Newton, that's another thing entirely. And he will set out there some of the ways in which numbers in biblical prophecy are fungible. Same as money is fungible. It has different forms meaning the same thing. So anyway, this is what we got out of those words from Daniel, and they're quite extraordinary, and they are the basis of time. And the question, obviously, you'd have for Daniel is, how could he possibly make these calculations? If we took any number of us who are here today and put us out in a tent in the countryside, or even put us in a city without electricity, and said, calculate the length of a year. I mean, we wouldn't have a chance. And a lot of you I know are engineers with the tools and equipment and technology of 2,500 years ago. You couldn't possibly get even close to what Daniel did. So it's quite extraordinary, and it's largely ignored, which makes it doubly valuable to us. So these figures are far too accurate to be just moon observations. So what's the purpose of Daniel recording these numbers? And what is the purpose of the injunction that he gives us, that he heard the man clothed in linen held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth for ever, that it shall be for a time, times, and an half. Kevin wants that title again if you're interested. It's called Observations on the Prophecy of St. John by Sir Isaac Newton. It's on the internet, it's free. He uses time slightly differently to how I did. And in fact, I didn't find out that he'd written his book until many years after I'd discovered the Daniel Code. But he gives you some good illumination in there on how days can mean weeks, months, years, decades, etc. So I hope that helps. So Daniel left us with these two numbers, and he left us with this declaration under a most solemn oath. And it's that declaration that actually tells us, it's actually an instruction on what we should do with the numbers. So we say 29.67 days is time. And this chart you're looking at, this is the S&P. And if we're looking at time, and we're looking at a day as our base measurement of time, because these numbers are expressed initially in days, we can transform them into something else, but initially they're expressed in days. So we should be looking at a daily chart. That's what this is. This is the S&P recently. And if you look at a daily chart, you'll see that some of the bars are what we call inside bars. I have them in red. They're a bar that has a lower high and a higher low. And other bars are called outside bars. They have a lower low and a higher high, and I have those in grey. And what I've done here is I've just taken the basic Daniel Code time cycle of 29, and I've then followed the instructions that Daniel gave us to use time, times, and an half. So 29 is time, 59 is times, 44 is time and an half. 62 is a slightly different number, but it relates to the rule of eights. And 70 is what we call the heathen number. It's not a heathen number at all, actually. It just comes from a different part of the book of Daniel, but it's the number that Sir Isaac Newton uses in his research. And interestingly, it has a particular affinity with anything European. For those of you who trade Forex or currency futures, anything European has a particular affinity for 70. So this chart may look to you like it's covered with a whole lot of rubbish. That's because I put 5 or 6 different time cycles on it at the same time. The point to get is that every one of these time cycles, I've simply started from an inside bar or an outside bar. We've used the 44, 59, 62, and 70 as our base measurement, all of which come straight out of the Daniel Code or the Rule of Eights. And you can see that it's picked every high and every low in this whole dramatic rundown we had. down into late or mid to late January, started in October. And every single one of the highs and lows of any importance at all has come on one of these time cycles. And that is simply by starting them from an inside bar or an outside bar. Why is that? Well, inside bars and outside bars are disruptions in time. Markets have their own internal time clock. It doesn't seem to be available to any logic. It slows down and speeds up on what appear to be random intervals, but it does its thing nonetheless. And inside bars are basically the market's way. We call them a null or a void. When the market gets ahead of itself, it's gone too fast, the market will start to create an inside bar or more than one inside bar. And it's like marching on the spot or running on the spot. There's activity, but there's no momentum. And that's a break in the nexus of time. In the same way, an outside bar is the opposite of that. It's what markets do when they get behind on their own internal time clock. They're essentially putting in 1.5 days activity or 2 days activity in one bar. And that's what gives you outside bars. So inside bars and outside bars are interruptions in the interregnum of time. They're not the only interruptions, but they're the easiest ones for you to see, and they're the easiest ones to prove that these markets are continually running on time cycles. So that was the 29.6. 59.3 is times or twice time, and this is its most famous apparition. Those of you who've been with me for a long time are well aware of this. What we had, this is back at the 2007 high and the 2009 crash low. We had a 59 cycle that worked high to high, and it finished on that bar. You can see it's got the 59 on it in October 2007. That's actually the closing high of that move. I know the next bar is the swing high, but this bar that the 59 expired on was the highest close in that whole move. So that gave us the closing high. And once we'd seen that 59 cycle in reaction, then we look for it to repeat. And as you move your eye through the chart, you can see the 89, which is and half, and you can see the 118, which has got the number 1 on it. And that's because the Trade Navigator tool doesn't count properly. It's actually 2, because 1, a period of 59 periods, this is working on a 6-day chart. So every one of these bars is 6 trading days. The first period expired in October 2007, and then it repeated. Look where the next 59 period, or the 118 if you like, expired, right on the low in March 2009. In fact, our time cycles as well, this was the 6-day chart. On the daily chart, we had the absolute day of the low that gave us the 666 low, the mark of the beast. And that was the low of that move. And I was running a tutorial in Taupo, New Zealand at the time, and we forecast this move. Didn't forecast it to be the absolute low, but we did forecast it to be a good buying opportunity and to have support of that number. So we were all madly buying S&P contracts during this tutorial going on. It was quite profitable. But there you are. That's the most well-known aspect of time. And these time cycles are just there. They're valid. They go on all the time. So our TO3 and our plus signals have an element of time, but they're also particularly dominated by price. This is Tuesday's trading, and I think, I'm not sure whether we've got Wednesday's bar on there or not. I think we have. Yes, we do. And you can see this is, in fact, oil, and you can see, I'll just get the correct date for you, if you'll bear with me. Still here, folks. Hold on. Here we are. CL2, there it is, the April contract. You can see, excuse me, on Wednesday last week, February the 20th, that's this bar here, this biggish bar up here. Look where it closed. It closed at 57.16 against the Daniel Code blue line of 57.17 that had been on that chart for months and months and months, and that gives you target recognition. And then 2 days later, we had the next subsequent high right here. We already had target recognition, but that high there at 57.81 was 20 ticks, 18 ticks odd past the blue line. But it was the bar 2 before that that gave us perfect target recognition, and our other requirements of time and price were valid, so that created a TO3 and a plus sell signal. It was also a blue line sell signal, and it's also a 6S signal. So this is showing you that these 6S signals do often have commonality with the TO3s and the blue lines. This is US dollar index. The last 2 days we had a sell order at a plus sell signal and a 6S sell signal for it on Tuesday. Held on the trade and got a good day's down out of it today. This is sugar. You can see the same thing here. It ran up from its 12.41 closing low, didn't quite get to the 13.45 high. It shows you there's considerable weakness in the market. And after a couple of inside bars, we had a plus sell signal for Tuesday, and also followed that. That's obviously a change of trend to down, and then today further down, running down to the 1278 red line. So these markets are not only tracking the Daniel Code numbers all the time, but they're also tracking time. Here's the next one for you to see. This is wheat. We've been having some great trading in wheat the last few days. The last 2 days have been down. We've caught every move in this market since January. It's been wonderful. And I put some of the time cycle sell signals on here for you, but I've also put the Daniel Code time cycle numbers on there just to show you that the important highs and lows have all come at these Daniel Code numbers. Now, remember when I say that to you, these time cycle signals are valid to plus or minus 1 day only. The reason for that, and there's actually 2 reasons. It's valid to start your time counts from either a bar high low or from a closing high low. So you can use the chart high low or the closing high low, and they could often have 1 day between them. The other variable is that, of course, we're using whole numbers. You can see we're using 59 and 44. They're not, in fact, whole numbers. It's 59.3 and 44.4, which is very nearly 44.5. So these numbers can shift 1 bar only because we can't run a chart where we are analysing it, instead of dividing the bars into days, we're dividing them into periods that have a fraction on them. I've done it. Don't think I haven't. I've certainly tried it in the past, and it wasn't worth the effort. So don't waste your time on that. Stick to daily charts. They're giving you everything that you could conceivably need. And so you can see here how there's a conjunction of the main time cycles and the 6S cycles, because they are being created purely on time. And what we've done is we've created a machine, and that's the simplest way of talking about it. It's a set of rules that means that the program is always constant. There's no emotion involved in it. There's no opinion involved in it. It's simply a machine that reads trend in a very particular way. It's not the best way, incidentally. No machine trading program, in my view, will ever match the Educated Mark 1 eyeball. For those of you, of course, who've done tutorials, Daniel Code tutorials with me, you'll know that some of the tools that we have available to determine trend are quite sophisticated, and not all those tools can in fact be programmed at all. They defy programming, which means that any other machine apart from your Educated Mark 1 eyeball is under some limitation. So no, it's not as good as you can do yourself. If you want to be a really seriously elite trader, then you're most welcome to do a Daniel Code tutorial, and I'll teach you how to do this better than the machine. But having said that, we still think the machine is fantastic. It's not biased. It has no emotion. It simply creates the numbers every day, and it creates new signals or potential new signals and potential new stops almost every day. So what it's doing is it's filling in the gaps between the TO3 and the TO3 Plus that are giving you the turns and some of the continuations. Excuse me, this machine is giving you a new order every day, or at least it's telling you where to put your stops every day. So it holds your hand every day. The results we've seen are very, very good, and I'll show you some more of that as we go along. But what we've done is we've taken the smallest iteration of the Daniel Code time sequences, and there's a number of them, and they're different, and some of them overlap, and we've used that for success to run on. So it's creating signals and stops based purely on time, and its turns will often match the TO3 and Plus signals, but in addition, as I've said, it fills in the blanks between the turns. So it will have you with the apparent trend almost all the time. We think its returns are sensational, and it also is managing your risk on a continuous basis. Talking about being with the apparent trend almost all the time, we've run this thing now for over 5 months, which is 100 days, 100 trading days, 22 trading days in most months, 100 trading days, and we've had 10 or 11 markets, so say 1,000 signals. We've only actually seen about 3 or 4 of the occasions where the market's done a snapback reverse against the trend. So you think in terms of 2 or 3 of those sort of, they're not errors, they're what are they? They're standout. Well, they're expensive errors because when the reversal against the trend comes on a snapback basis, you would have your largest exposure on risk. But they're very limited, as I said, maybe 3 in the last 1,000 signals. By that I don't mean, I'm not talking about losses. Losses are a normal part of trading, wins and losses. I'm talking about that particular step back against the trend, bigger than the daily bar. Okay, so let's continue on this. So the hardest thing to understand for anyone is that time and price are the same thing on different axes. So on the x-axis you have price, on the y-axis you have time. Every line on a chart has characteristics both of an x and a y-axis. And time and price are in fact the same thing on different axes, but they're not. They're the same thing quantitatively, but not qualitatively. By which I mean that this idea, the old Gann stuff of 3 by 1s and 1 by 1s and 8 by 1s, that's not right. Time doesn't work like that, but you can have, in fact, you normally will have different ratios for time and price. They're the same ratio, but they don't hit the same numbers hardly ever. So you will expect one ratio for time and one ratio for price. If you take away the price ratio and run it purely on time, it does amazingly well, and that's because time is inherently stronger than price. And I know that's another concept that's hard to understand, but I'll leave it there for you. So, but make sure you understand the 6S language. if a trade WT, we'll have a look at the page before we go, which will be a while yet. WT is a trade with the apparent trend. CT is a trade that appears to be a counter trend when the signals are created. It may turn out to be the new trend, but excuse me, and it's not a smoker's cough. I've given up smoking. A little bit of morning hay fever. And CT counter trends can become the trend the next day, but at the time the signal's created, it appears to be a counter trend. It will be under that heading CT. OB stands for outside bar. The rule is to always stop and reverse if an outside bar occurs on the day of a new entry. Now, I know that for many of you who go to jobs and can't sit there looking at charts all day, and if you don't have a platform that allows you to put on this conditional stop and reverse for an outside bar, you can just have your normal stop and get stopped out, in which case take both the signals for the next day. The 6S will assume that you did a reversal and went with the outside bar, but if in fact you are flat for any reason that you did get stopped out, you can always take both of the signals for the next day. Okay, one of them will have a restrictive stop because it's against the apparent trend. One will have a more generous stop because it's with the apparent trend. So because the 6S is a machine, it's always consistent in its analysis. And that's very important because emotion gets in the way for almost everyone. You get to the stage like me, you've been doing it for 30 years, you don't have any emotion. Certainly not about charts, but it'd be a great help to all of you. I know we have lots of clients who actually know how to trade, but they're quite happy to have the 6S to just check that their trend analysis is correct. So we've been running that for you now for 5 months, and it's going to be available on all CME markets, all ICE markets, all the futures markets, I should say, and on NYMEX and COMEX as well. In other words, every futures market from a major exchange. And from next Monday, it will be behind a paywall. We're going to add 9 Forex markets in the next month or so. See if you folks who trade Forex will enjoy the 6 seal. And our fees for these markets with smaller margins are costed $129 a month. Those with bigger margins are $159 a month, but particularly in appreciation of those clients who are subscribed to our website membership pro package, that's the $249 a month package, we will add any 2 of the 6S markets for you at no cost. And you can, of course, subscribe for as many markets as you like. We're getting a tropical thunderstorm here. If you can hear a bit of background noise roaring, that's the rain on the roof. Let me see if I can close some of that out. It's getting a bit loud here. That will be a bit better for you. Big thunderstorm, wonderful. We needed the rain desperately. So, if you're a Membership Pro client, thank you for your support. We'll be happy to give you any 2 that you like. That's free. And if you want more than that, we'd welcome you to subscribe for them. And contact Terry, please, at support@thedanielcode.com to advise him of which 6S markets you would like added to your account. And Terry will do that. Once you get started, you'll be able to switch 1 market a month, no charge. If you want to switch more than 1 market a month to a different market, which is very important, Terry will make a small charge for doing that. So by the weekend or by Monday, certainly, we'll have a full list of all the markets that will be available, and you can subscribe to all of them individually. Or if you're subscribed to the Pro membership, you can have 2 of them for no charge with my compliments, in appreciation of your support of the Daniel Code, and you can then subscribe to as many as you like. So you're just simply leasing the output of a machine. Okay, so read the instructions on the 6 Seal page carefully and see the video at that page also. Remember, we're using Trade Navigator's 067 continuous contracts in here, so at rollover you'll be in the old contract, but you need to exit that contract and create a matching position in the new contract. By that I mean if you're long one, you need to get flat, sell that one, get flat, and then get long one in the new contract, whatever that's going to be. And make sure you know the difference between chart high lows and true high lows, which is what Success uses for its signals. This is vital because I know some of you use our signals in other markets, particularly in mini contracts and what have you. And so for those to have your entry at the right place and your stops at the right place, make sure you know that you're using true highs, true lows of daily bars, not chart highs and chart lows. So when we're trading against the trend with Success, we're using a fixed percentage of average daily range for the counter trend trades. And you can adjust this as you like. This is a bit out of order, but this is I've got one slide out of order here, folks. Let me go to the next one and then come back to that one. See if it's changed for you. Yes, yes, it has. This is not Success, but it's something very close to Success. This is what we call CTP, a Continuous Trade Program. This is a computer-driven program that, excuse me, now I'm talking about the wrong one myself. This is what we're using to create the discretionary trailing stops in Success when we take a trade against the apparent trend. You can see all the markets are listed down there, and what I have taken is 225 days average daily range over a period of 225 days. 225 days doesn't mean anything in particular, it's just a big number. You might wish to use a year. There's about 255 trading days in a full year, or you may wish to use a half year, whatever period you like, it's up to you. But what I want to do is take a fairly long period, trading the average daily range over the last 25 days, the last 225 days, I should say, I'm getting ahead of myself, and express that in dollars. And you can then use any one of those numbers to the right as your discretionary trailing stop. They're all Daniel Code ratios, 29.6, 37.5, 44.5, 50, 59. You can use any one of those numbers as your discretionary trailing stop, or something else entirely if you wish. At present, we're using the 44.5% as the discretionary trailing stop. It's just been updated. I didn't look at it again from August until recently, but this thing will need to be updated every 2 months. It won't change a great deal because we're using such a long period to get your average. The whole point of this is so you don't go expanding your risk when you get trading big volatile bars. As bars get smaller and bigger, there's a tendency to get bigger and sloppy on your stops and your risk management when the bars expand. So particularly, for example, if you're using a 1 bar stop, those bars can get very, very big indeed, and you don't want to use the 1 bar stop. You want to go to a fixed dollar stop equal to somewhere around the average daily range. If you don't do that, you get in a position where you could have 1 loss on a big bar, which is going to wipe out 4 wins on an average bar. And that's not desirable at all. In fact, that's very bad. So you want it within reason. Don't sort of get too uptight about it, but within reason, you want to try and keep the aim is to keep the risk on all of your trades roughly similar. Okay? But there's a simple chart you can see there. if you want to make your stop losses smaller, you can go down and use 37.5 or 29.6 or less. You can pick a number, whatever you like, doesn't matter. But remember, the smaller your stop loss, the more often you're going to get stopped out. Okay, so that was that. This one that's out of order, I want to show you this. This is the CTP program that stands for Continuous Trade Protocol. This is something we've been trying to develop for a number of years. This is a fully computerized trading program. This is some output we printed out from it in about August last year. We haven't updated, and we have made changes since this last run. You can see that sugar right down towards the bottom here has a pretty negative 2018. It wasn't working properly. Same with silver, had an error in it. We fixed both of those, and the ones that are saying error across the centerpiece, the program wasn't reading the data properly. This will give you an idea of the sort of returns that these computerized programs have been getting now. I'm not telling you that Success will get that. This is not Success. Success will actually do better or worse, who knows. But as a level of consistency, a computerized program that's making the same decisions all the time takes out a huge proportion of the risk. And if you take out the risk of decision making, emotion, and everything else, all you're left with is volatility and the angle of the trend. So if you have a look here, halfway down the middle section, you look at gold, GC2. It had made $19,000 in 2017, $10,000 in 2016, $12,000 in 2015, and had a loss of $8,000 in 2018. Why does that happen? Well, if you take out everything else, what's driving the engine is volatility. And volatility is like waves. It comes and it goes. It waxes and it wanes, which is why, and there's no way known, to me at least, of forecasting future volatility, which is why you want to be trading more than one market. If you're just trading one market, you'll get very obsessed with it. You need to be trading more than one market precisely for the reason that volatility comes and goes. With a machine trading program, either the CTP or the Success, the only time you'll consistently lose money is during a consolidation. In other words, when there is no trend, the trend is sideways. When these markets get into a consolidation phase, there's not enough momentum to give you a profitable close up or down. Now, for those of you who do tutorials, we have techniques for dealing with that. But basically, be aware if you are in a market that stopped trending, that is showing signs of consolidation, you need to take some action. And one of the things you can do is stop trading that market, go to another market until volatility returns. That's quite common to do that. And you should, however number of markets you intend to trade, you should be looking at two more than that at the end of every week or on every weekend, just so you're aware of which markets are trending and got some life about them. So don't trade dead consolidating markets. That's the most important message you can take. Apart from that, you can see what the potential of this machine trading is. These returns are quite phenomenal. In the right-hand column, we've got estimated return percent on margin, and some of those numbers are outstanding. You're not going to get anything like that in any program because machine trading assumes that you get filled perfectly at the price you want, that there's no slippage. It assumes that the market's actually done what the machine has assumed, what we do with our machines. They'll read the prices 3 times a day, so we've got a pretty good idea whether the low comes first or the high comes first. But anything that's got paper trading on it, which is what this is inherently disposed to error. So don't rely on this. You don't even have access to this program, but I just want to show you what's coming down the line and what is possible with machine trading. Okay, so I think that is the important part. These are the discretionary stops against the trend stops. You can use any numbers you like. It's your money. You do what you like. So we said here that nothing in the machine trading will ever replace the educated eyeball. And if you'd like to be educated as an elite trader, if you have aspirations to be a super trader, please let me know. I'll be happy to teach you the Daniel Code tutorial. If you send me an email at jneedham@thedanielcode.com, I'll be happy to send you some written material on the trading course. If you'd like me to speak with you on the phone, email me with your phone number, country and location, so I'm not calling you in the middle of the night, and indicate a convenient time and I'll give you a call, and we can chat about your trading and see if you are interested in doing the Daniel Code trading tutorial. Okay, Adrian, glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. And it seems that God willing, and he has been, we've got through the tutorial without the dreaded missing mic problem coming back in. So Terry, it looks like you have solved that issue for us. It doesn't fill me with great confidence. We had too much trouble with it, but Mike says, yeah, the sound was great, and Kevin said you could actually hear me. That was great. So, folks, I think that's probably all I've got. Terry says it was good. Hope he means the tutorial as well as the sound. If you haven't already had a free trial, folks, you're welcome to have a free trial of our website. Just go to the Daniel Code website, www.thedanielcode.com. Click on the register button. Terry will be happy to give you a 31-day free trial of everything we do, and a 14-day free trial of 6S. It has signals every day, so we don't make any claims or statements about any results. What we do say is try it for yourself, see if it suits you, make your own judgment. If you like it, you can subscribe to it. If you don't like it, well, that's fine too. So there's, hey, Big Mike, there you are. Got it in caps. Thanks, mate. So, folks, that is us for the day. Thank you very much for being with us. This is our compliance statement. I urge you to read it. It's very, very easy to lose money trading futures. It's very easy to lose a lot of money very quickly. So make sure you're not trading with real money until you are absolutely confident that you have an understanding of trading futures markets. And the best thing you can possibly do is do a Daniel Code tutorial, in which case I will turn you into an elite trader. And you will be busy counting your money from then on forever. Okay, so thanks, folks. John, thank you. I hope things are nice in Coffs Harbour. We just had some rain, mate. Boy, it won't last long, but it was good to have. Thank you for being with us, folks. And do please email me with anything you'd like. See if there's anything I missed that I want to show you. No, not really. There's the wheat chart. Email me anything in particular you'd like me to talk about at the next webinar. Any questions about 6S? We'll be writing up some documents and things for the weekend. Please shoot me your emails. I'll make sure I answer them. So thanks for being with us. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.